Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Saskia. I am a yoga teacher and I'm passionate about making yoga accessible to everyone. And today's class is a hip opening flow, sort of a slow flow, and I'm going to use some props to make it more suitable for larger bodies. So I'm going to use my two blocks here and also my bolster. And on top of that, I'm sitting on sort of a meditation cushion. You don't need it. You can use your bolster or your blocks or maybe a folded blanket to sit on, so either of that will be fine. So we're going to start with a dynamic hip opener called Titali Asana. It's like butterfly, but like a fluttering butterfly. So start by sitting. You can sit on your cushion or block or whichever prop you're using. I find it helpful because if I don't sit up on something in this pose, I tend to sort of fall backwards on my back rounds. So you want to be able to sit up nice and tall with your spine straight, shoulders rolled back. So once you're in that position, you can hold on to either your ankles or your feet. See what works for you. And you want your feet to be fairly close to your hips. So see how close you can get them to your hips. You may need to, so for some people that might be, here. For some people that might be there. Either is fine. We all have different bodies, so it really doesn't matter. You'll still get the same benefits wherever you are. So to start, I'm gonna hold onto my ankles because it allows me to sit up more. Because if I hold onto my feet, you see I'm rounded more, so that just works for me, but you got to do what works for you. And from there, we're going to start moving the legs up and down. And you can start off fairly slow, just getting a little bit of movement in the hips. And also, if your legs are here while you're a butterfly, that doesn't matter either. You can still do the movement up here. So really don't worry if what you are doing doesn't look the same as what I'm doing. And once you've got that movement, see if you can speed it up a bit. You might hear your legs making some sound on the mat. And I'm really taking off here. We'll do this for a few more breaths. And then starting to slow it down. And coming to stillness. With your hands, bring your knees together. And then placing your feet wide. We're going to do some windshield wiper motion. So placing your hands behind you, just letting your knees fall from one side and to the other side. So this is really nice to do after any sort of hip opening pose, just so you get some relief. So from there, we're going to come onto our knees, and actually I'm going to take a blanket for this. So if you have a blanket, I should have mentioned this at the start, you can always pause your video if you want to grab a blanket, place it under your knees. It will just make it a little bit more comfortable. And from there, stepping your right foot forward, just sort of walk it forward until you reach the point where you can sink your hips down and you're fairly comfortable. So here, if you find that the floor is a little bit far away, so you want your hands on the inside of your right foot, you can place your hands on blocks. And because we're working on the hips here, pick up your right toes and move them out to the right hand side. So that opens up your hip. You can even push your knee out a little bit further. And from there, see if you can come down maybe a little bit further. Perhaps you can come onto your forearms, either on the blocks, or maybe the blocks are a bit too far away. You can put a bolster over the blocks. See what works for you. Or maybe you can come down all the way to the mat, depending on your flexibility. And we'll just stay here for a few breaths. So try to relax into the pose. Relaxing your hips down. Because the more you relax your hips, the deeper you can get into the stretch. You can even swing a little from side to side if that works well for you. Just see what feels good. And from there, if you were on your forearms, coming back onto your hands, either on the blocks or on the mat, and then start to walk that left foot over to your left. So the right foot over to your left. So we're coming into our pigeon pose here, and there's a few ways you can do this. So you can walk the foot over, coming into pigeon pose like this. If you find that your hip is up, you can use a block, placing it under the hip. See, for me I'm still not quite where the block is, so I'm going to use a second block. And there it's a bit more comfortable. But this, I'll be honest, this is not my preferred way of doing pigeon pose, so I usually like to use my bolster, because I find it's the perfect height for me. So feel free to play around with your props. And if you're using a bolster, or you can use a cushion as well, as long as it sits underneath your hip. Again, walking your foot over and then bringing your hips onto the bolster. And from there you want to lengthen your left leg back. So maybe picking up the knee, making it nice and long, and your left toe is pointing back. And you can either stay up here on your hands, or if you have that flexibility within you, you can come down onto your forearms, or you can stretch all the way out with your forehead coming onto the mat. So see what works for you. If you're on your forearms, it might be nice to grab a block to rest your forehead on. And then you can fully relax into this pose. Relaxing your hips completely. And we'll stay here for a few breaths. And just one more breath here. And from there, lift up your head, coming back onto your hands. And find your way off your bolster or props. And then making your way back into a tabletop position. And it might feel really nice to just push that right leg back and bringing the toes on the mat and really push that heel away from you to just stretch the leg out. And from there we'll do the same thing on the other side. So stepping your left foot forward. And again, you might want to use your blocks here to bring the ground a little bit closer to you. Sink your hips down as far as they go. And again, it really doesn't matter if what you're doing doesn't look like what I'm doing. So you might be further down than me, or you know, you might be here, and that's also fine. As long as you're feeling that stretch, that's what it's all about. So find your edge where you feel a stretch, but it shouldn't stretch so much that you're in pain. And from there, lifting up the left toes and then swiveling it out to your left so that this hip opens up. And you can either stay up on your hands, or if that's comfortable for you, you can come onto your forearms. Either using your blocks, or maybe a bolster on top of the blocks, or straight onto the mat. See what's available to you right now. And try to relax as much as you can. The more you can relax in these poses, the more you'll become flexible over time. Just a few more breaths here. And let's come back onto your hands if you were on your forearms. And we'll come into our pigeon pose again. So I'll show those same options again on this side. You can start to walk your left foot over to the right. Coming down. And you see my hip is not on the mat. So you can use a block. That still doesn't quite do it for me because I have to lean over to reach the block. I can use another block, but I find that's a little bit too high actually, so this is why I use the bolster. So we place the bolster there, step the foot forward, and I'm bringing the hips on top of the bolster. And from there you can do the same thing as you did on the other side. You can either stay up here, if this is enough of a stretch for you, or maybe you can come down onto your forearms. And if that's the case, it might feel nice to rest your forehead on your block. So stretching your right leg behind you, the toes pointing back. And try to relax into the pose. Relaxing your hips completely. We'll stay here for a few more breaths. One more breath here. And when you're ready to come out, lifting your head up, coming back onto your hands, and find your way out of the pose in whichever way is most comfortable to you. And then coming back into your tabletop, straightening your left leg behind you, and then just push that heel away to really stretch the leg out. And from there, coming to lay down on your back, closing our practice with effortless rest. So laying down, you want to just bring your hips up a little bit so that your lower back is in contact with the floor. Placing your feet as wide as your mat, and then just let your knees fall in towards each other. It's okay if they don't touch. You just want to be comfortable here. Your hands can rest on your belly. And taking a few breaths here. Sending love into your belly through your hands. Sending love to your body. And be grateful for yourself. Be grateful for being able to move. And be proud of yourself for taking time out of your day to spend on your own well-being. Let's take a few more breaths here. And when you're ready, you can roll onto one side, pushing yourself up, finding a comfortable seat, maybe using a cushion or a blanket or a block or anything to sit on. So find yourself a comfortable seat that works for you. And bringing your hands in front of your heart, and we'll close with a cleansing breath together. So take a deep breath in through your nose, and then exhale through your mouth, bowing forward. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this short practice. And I'll see you next week for a new video. Bye.